Hi, welcome to Frequently Asked Questions for the GT class. The next question to address is maybe kind of comes in two parts. It could be said two different ways. One is, why did my student fail that test? And then the corollary of that, second way it could be phrased is, why did my student fail that test? I quizzed him and he knew everything. So let me address those, and they kind of overlap, but hopefully I can answer both of those. The first answer would be possibly test anxiety, right? The quizzes and tests and things that are in GT are different, they're more challenging, they can be bizarre, they're quote-unquote hard, the kids say. So some kids do have difficulty taking those quizzes and tests, and so ultimately don't perform very well. So it could be test anxiety. I've seen that maybe at about, I don't know, 2% of the cases. All right, so it is a possibility, but there's some more likely answers to the question about why they failed the test, even if you did quiz them. First off would be they simply didn't prepare enough. Right? If they spent 5 minutes just looking over vocabulary, well, that's probably not what the whole quiz is about. It's very rare that I give a quiz or a test that's over just one little subject or one little compartment of material. So they probably didn't prepare enough. They should have looked at the vocabulary, they should have looked at their landmarks, they should have reviewed the poem that we read. And I always tell them ahead of time what they're supposed to be looking at. But in general, bottom line, the rule is be prepared for anything. So lack of preparation usually is a pretty typical answer for why they failed it. They just didn't look at enough of the material. Now, along with that, it could be that they may have looked at the material, but they weren't really preparing correctly. And what I mean by that, and I spent a lot of time in class talking about this, what I mean by that is sitting down in your bedroom with your notebook open, the computer on, your cell phone next to you, the stereo going, and every 3 minutes you flip a page and say, yeah, I know that, while you're texting your friend and all that kind of stuff. That's not adequate preparation, that's not good studying, right? It may get you by in certain circumstances, and maybe that's what got kids by before they got to me, but in this class it just doesn't work. And so consequently, if they're not preparing well and they're not preparing correctly and they're not truly focusing on the material, then they're going to do poorly on the quiz or the test. So that's a pretty standard response as to why they didn't do well, and that's one of the more likely culprits. The other thing is, and this goes with that one about I quizzed him and he knew it, so is it possible that he failed it? This answer is they didn't learn it backwards and forwards. And that's what I tell the kids in class all the time. You've got to know the material backwards and forwards, and what I mean by that is you can't just say, okay, here's the word Luddite and here's the definition. I'm done, I know it. I know what Luddite, I can define that. You need to learn it backwards as well, so that if you are presented with the definition, then you can supply the word. Now as adults, maybe that seems easy and comes naturally to us, but for kids it doesn't often come naturally. And so they have to really work at learning those things backwards and forwards. And then along with that, even knowing it backwards and forwards, often the quiz questions and the test questions are not simply give me the definition, but it's a more challenging question. If the vocab word is taciturn and we've spent 2 weeks learning the Bill of Rights, then the question may be, make a connection between taciturn and the Constitution. You have to know that material backwards and forwards in order to make an intelligent connection. Right? It can't just be that both words have an N in them. That will be a failure. Right? So that is another standard response as to why a student has not done well on a test or a quiz. They haven't learned the materials backwards and forward, and they can't, then therefore are unable to apply it in the types of questions that I ask. So recapping, maybe they didn't study enough, maybe they didn't study all the material that they were supposed to study, maybe they didn't study correctly, and maybe they didn't learn it backwards and forwards. If they did all the things right and they still failed it, and we see that happen over and over, then definitely we'll need to talk. It may be test anxiety, or we may need to have some one-on-one talks about study habits. Okay? Hope that helps. Thanks.